Welcome to the Tippie Leads podcast, stories from the University of Iowa's Tippie College of Business that will change the way you work and lead. I'm your host, Nick Westergaard. I teach at Tippie and lead our Story Lab program. Each season of Tippie Leads, we focus on a grand challenge in today's changing world of work. This season, we're looking at how you can be the CEO of your life. Previously, we've talked about vision, habits, and balance. But one question that we should be asking that we're not is, who else are you? Beyond your job title, your industry, your lane, what other interests and talents do you have that you might be leaving on the table? Luckily, Alexandra Nica is here to help us push beyond our discipline box. Alexandra is a professor of instruction and director of undergraduate studies for the economics department at Tippie. Her focus is on helping our students to not only understand economics, but to push beyond the limitations and lanes that they might put themselves in. Originally from Romania, yes, near Count Dracula's castle, she was the first in her family to earn her doctorate abroad. When she's not in the classroom, she can be found competing as a concert pianist at the international level. Alexandra is truly someone who practices what she teaches. After that, we'll hear from Tippie alum Kyleigh Selepa, whose story about finding her calling started a little closer to home. And, as always, we'll bring it all together with a final Tip E just for you. Ready? Let's get started. You talk a lot about this idea of the discipline box. I wonder if you'd take us through what that is.
So with the discipline box, I always think about how we traditionally teach economics, whether it's microeconomics or macroeconomics. And sometimes we tend to, let's say, get stuck a little bit in our ways, teaching demand and supply the same way, teaching, even things like economic growth or GDP. And I personally found through, my type of research and looking for different strategy of teaching that a lot of the times the best inspiration was when I stepped outside of my academic box. So I would be part of a lot of faculty learning communities across campus. And through those, I meet with different faculty members from different disciplines. And that has been such a rich experience because it has given me different perspective on how to approach specific teaching and learning issues. And so it brought me outside of my discipline box. And then I try to apply kind of the same principles to getting my students out of their academic box. Because I feel like sometimes, it's not just us, right? Also students maybe get stuck into a specific course or a specific topic, right? And they think it only applies there. And it's not true. For example, I always tell them economics is everywhere. Economics, we apply economics. You, I, everybody, we apply economics every single day with every decision we make. And so to actually let them see that, not just me telling them, then I decided to do something, different, taking them outside of the discipline box and going all the way through an art exercise. So the discipline box is, I always see it as the set of tools that we give students to kind of be able to navigate the specific concepts, the sort of applications that we do. But it's so useful to, after you have the set of tools, to step outside of that box and see how you can use them and how you can use other things to improve, your knowledge, your expertise, depending on what you're trying to do in that particular subject or discipline.
So you made some headlines with this, literally, in the Tippie magazine last fall, talking about taking students through the museum. And I wonder, what does that look like in class? What instructions are they given? Because students especially can be linear when they're learning, and I'm here to learn this, and it could be jarring or even anxiety inducing. Wait, what am I doing at a museum? Is this going to be on the quiz?
That is so true. So the way I prepare them is I tell them we are doing a project that will be all of it in class. It's not stressful in terms of the grading part of it. The whole point is for them to participate because it is useful in their learning process. And actually, the project itself has three stages. One is in the classroom where I walk them through some macroeconomics graphs because that's the link with economics, you know, the visuals in economics versus the visuals in art. And the second stage of the process is when I take them to the museum. And that's where the curators walk the students through some really fun exercises that, you know, the curators and I have planned in advance, and also the exercises that are essentially linked to this close looking exercise of trying to see more in depth, whether it's an artwork or then, you know, a graph in macroeconomics. Just having students slow down and focus on that image for a little bit, because I think one of the issues also nowadays is, like you said, students are sort of learning linearly, and also they're trying to do this very fast.
Right.
And sometimes they look at the graph, they think they have understood it, but there are so many elements to it that you do need to take a little bit of time. And so this exercise kind of forces them, for a lack of a better word, to go through this particular type of exercise. And then the third phase of the project is back in the classroom, where I give the students a little bit more complex graphs, and then ask them to go through the same observational process and then write down the things that they notice. So the first time I did the project, I have to admit I was terrified because, like you said, I had no idea how students will react, right? And they were so enthusiastic about having something done outside of the classroom, so outside of our traditional way of, you know, talking about macroeconomics and all of this. And they were looking forward to their museum visit. And then at the museum, they were walked through the series of exercises that those I actually did not tell them in advance about, because it was supposed to have them be surprised and see what they're going to write down. And it has been a really, really positive experience. I got great feedback from many of my students, and now I've done the project twice, and this semester is going to be the third time.
That is awesome. And I love that this comes from such a unique aspect of you as well, because sometimes there's the do as I say, not as I do, but looking to your own life as an award-winning concert pianist, what is the discipline of music taught you about executive presence, preparation, even analyzing complex situations that maybe an economics textbook couldn't?
You are so right. I like how you said the discipline of music, because it truly is the discipline of music. It takes discipline to practice a lot, to, you know, go over those moments of frustration when, you know, things don't work so well. Sometimes it takes quite a while to prepare a piece until it's stage ready, because sometimes you can have a piece but it's not stage ready yet. So there is a difference, right, between having something that you know, but then also able to present it. And this is so true for teaching too, right? Sometimes you think you know something, but until you have to actually teach it or explain it to somebody, that's the moment when you actually know that you know something really well. And so in that, teaching and music are so close to each other, because I find so many parallels. Oh, and there is also, let's say, I wouldn't say like negative aspect, but maybe sometimes I'm trying a little bit too much, preparing a little bit too much, let's say, even though I already have my preparation for next day's lecture. I always have to tinker with something. I always have to add another problem. I always have to look and say, is this clear enough for my students? So I think that also comes from the discipline of music, because I have been so used to having to, you know, I don't. This will also not sound too great, but like be perfect, right? You need to be perfect with your music to be on stage with it, and so it kind of translates also into this other aspect where you're trying to be always have everything set, and sometimes it's you need to adapt, and that also happens on stage too. So I did have moments even in competitions when sometimes your brain just says, oh, I forgot this particular range of your music, even though we have practiced this a million times. And so then I found myself improvising on stage, and then until I could get back into the normal rhythm of the music and a normal score of the music. It happened to me in competitions, and fortunately it was actually not observable because I was able to do this. So I think also in teaching we do this a lot as well, when we get questions, when you have to adapt specific problems for student understanding, depending on what exactly you see that they're maybe, let's say, struggle with a little bit, some of the concepts that are a little bit more fuzzy. um, and with that, I'm kind of going now into a little bit of a tangent, but I always, for instance, ask my students after I talk to them about a specific concept to take a little bit of a pause and write down at least three key elements that they remember from what I said, and also write down whatever still is fuzzy. And so this also helps them, I think, focus a little bit. And then it helps me, giving me feedback to see what I have to adapt, what I have to do specific for this particular class. Because, I observe it really does depend. It's not always the same questions that I get for the same material. So then I have to adapt. So I find that both, music has prepared me really well for all of this. And the other thing, which is really interesting, is I have the same kind of, let's say, it's not quite stage fright, but somewhere in there, before I go on stage versus before I go into a large lecture.
Yeah.
And I am nervous ahead of time, usually a day ahead, or sometimes 2 or 3 days ahead, an hour ahead. Once I step on stage, once I step to that podium in lecture or on the stage for the piano, I'm fine. My stress disappears. But until then, I'm, that stress sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming. So, but it's interesting how it's exactly the same kind of feeling, the same kind of evolution of how I go from preparation, still being nervous about it, and then when I'm on stage or when I'm at the podium in the classroom, then everything settles down and I'm fine. So I always draw this parallel about all of this is almost like a performance every single time, sort of that presence either on stage or in the classroom.
So we talked about, younger students, being linear and focused. Something that happens when we advance through life is that as we're working, we tend to view our hobbies or outside interests as distractions from our core work. How do you navigate finding something like you have with music that I can see that this while totally different, is making me better at that? For someone that might not be as clear on, well, I like a lot of different things, how can I feed the one that's going to inform my work as well?
Oh, that's such a great question because uh, I wish a lot of times that I had more time to no more time for my music because it really does help me. It provides it's almost like stepping outside of the discipline box, but in a different way, right? It provides you that different perspective. You concentrate on something else while your brain is still working on the problem that, let's say, either it's something that I want to teach uh, or somebody needs to do some research and they are stuck on an idea or on the model, or it really helps to step outside of that moment and do something that you really enjoy, and then everything else will then becomes clearer. You make connections that you haven't really thought about before, and it really helps all of my process. My Whenever I have time to to play piano, not is it is not just a stress relief, but it allows my brain to kind of both relax and also in the background work on some of the things that maybe I am preoccupied about in my work or in my academic discipline or in my teaching or so I would so highly recommend to anybody to make some time and pursue their hobbies because it is such an important part of our lives, of our preparations also as professionals. And you are absolutely right. As times goes by, sometimes we don't find as much time for these hobbies, and um, it really is not a great thing to not have that that particular time. So as much as possible, I would recommend it. For me, what worked, because if I don't have a deadline, sometimes I do not. So for me, what works is those you mentioned at the beginning. There is an annual concert that I participated, and that is a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. So having that concert, having that deadline for me really helps me to actually sit down at the piano at a specific time and do something. And so that really helps. So if maybe this type of strategy could also be helpful for other people, that's what works for me really well.
I'm Kira Ellerbrook. I am a student here at Tippie, as well as a producer on the podcast. I am a Story Lab peer mentor as well, and because today we're talking about nourishing talents beyond our core work, we've chosen Kyleigh Selepa's story. Kyleigh describes the depression she experienced during her freshman year of college, where she was unsure about her major and how she found her true calling.
There was a time in my life where I was absolutely miserable. And I mean, wake up miserable, breakfast, lunch, dinner, go back to bed, miserable. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a problem. It was. It's called depression. And I'm okay with that. It's okay to have a mental illness. The problem was, at the time, I had not learned how to cope with it yet. I was sitting in my dorm room at the end of my freshman year. At the time, I was majoring in biology and I was on the pre-med track. And I thought, wow, I hate this. This is so boring. I cannot stand one more second of it. Now, normally, I'm the kind of person who calls my mom when I'm going through something. But how do you have that kind of phone call? Oh, hi, Mom. You know that really expensive tuition you've been paying? Well, it's actually being wasted because I hate what I'm doing and what's that word? Oh, miserable. Click. I wasn't going to do that. So I texted the next best person, my older sister. My older sister was at Iowa State University. Don't hold it against her. She was also studying biology, also on the pre-med track. And I texted her and I asked, how did you know you were in the right place? And she was honest with me and she told me she didn't at first. But by her junior year, she was definitely for sure that that was what she wanted to do. Now, I couldn't wait that long, and I knew that. But she had also told me that she had taken her core courses like the chemistries, the biologies, anatomy, and she had enjoyed it. And as you guys already know, I did not. So she told me to take the summer and just figure out what I was going to do next. So I did. So what's the first thing you do when you need a change? That's right, you get a haircut. Short, so everyone knew I was in crisis as well. Then I just went about my summer making changes like that. I got a job, I started cutting people out of my life who weren't making me happy anymore, and I picked up hobbies that I had never tried. And it worked, I was getting happier, I was. But I found myself halfway through absolutely dreading the fact of having to come back here, which was strange because I really love Iowa. So I thought, okay, it's time to nail down what I'm doing next semester. That summer, my little sister was turning 9, and my mom was throwing her a party. My mom always threw the best parties for me and my sisters growing up. So I thought back to my 9th birthday party, which was a carnival party. Now I say that, and I don't want you guys to think it was a carnival-themed party. No, it was a carnival. We had ring toss, pluck a duck, Plinko, and then we had food stands, so a cotton candy machine, a popcorn machine, hot dog stand. And of course, you have to have prizes. So we had stickers, trinkets, and the cherry on top, real live goldfish that went home with every single kid. You guys should have seen the looks they gave my mama when they were walking out with their kids. I thought back to that time, and that was a moment I was genuinely so happy. And I thought to myself, I want to do that for other people. Not everyone is as fortunate to have someone in their life that can plan those moments. So it's like, well, what if I do that? I can be an event planner. So now with my life kind of figured out, I wanted to talk to my mom about it. We were in the car, and I just blurted out. I looked over, I was like, I'm going to change my major, I'm going to do marketing. I don't actually know when I decided that part. I'm going to do marketing, and then I'm going to get a certificate in event management. And she looked at me, and she's like, is that what's going to make you really happy? And I said, yes. And she's like, then I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'm so excited for you. You're going to be so good at it. And then she told me that, ironically enough, my grandma, her mother, had told my mom that she had thought my mom had missed her calling in event planning. I'm going to be honest, that didn't sit right with me. I was like, why do you have to have already missed it? You're still young. So that became another goal in my life, was I was going to go, I'm going to get my degree, I'm going to go out and get experience, and then my mom and I are going to open this business together. We're going to do event planning together. And that's become a driving force for this passion. Every time that I'm not sure where I'm going, or I get a bad exam score, I think, okay, this is the end goal, this is why I have to keep trying, this is why I have to keep going. I think back to that time, freshman year, when I was absolutely miserable, and I can't help but be so grateful, which sounds absolutely insane. But I wouldn't be the person I am today without it. I wouldn't be here, literally here standing in front of you, talking today. I could have stayed with my life because I was just bored in my major, and I could have stuck with it. But because of that added layer of that depression, that mental illness, it really drove me to find change, to find happiness for myself. And that was terrifying, not knowing what was next. But I'm even more terrified if I had just fallen into that sunken cost fallacy and wound up in a life I hated. And now, I can say with 100% certainty that I will move through life, no false starts, no fake happiness, just 100% me and my passions. Thank you.
Let's go back to our guest one last time for a final tip E for you to remember in your work.
I would say to not be afraid to step outside of the regular routine, the regular department, the regular interactions, because it makes all of the experience, the research, the teaching, and our personal lives so much richer when we have all of these different perspectives. If it's, faculty from other departments working on specific tasks, or if it's a hobby, or if it's, pursuing music, it is such a valuable thing to do, and it enriches our lives, both our professional lives and our personal lives.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Tippie Leads. Big thanks to Alexandra Nica for a conversation that I'm sure will inspire many to pick up a new hobby or dust off an old one. And to Kyleigh Selepa for sharing such a personal story on connection and calling. As always, thanks to Kira Ellerbrook for producing our Student Story segment, and to the Tippie Marketing Communication team for supporting the show. Next, we're talking about the power of saying no. Michelle Williams joins us to explore how boundaries aren't a limitation, they're a leadership strategy. As you learn to say no, I hope that you'll say yes to this next episode of Tippie Leads. I'll see you there. This has been Tippie Leads, a podcast from the University of Iowa's Tippie College of Business. To learn more about our faculty guests, their research, and more, go to tippie.uiowa.edu/Tippie Leads. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or coworker. Or better yet, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And if you're feeling generous, consider leaving us a rating or review to help others find the show. This is Nick Westergaard signing off. On behalf of everyone at Tippie, thanks for listening, and go Hawks!